All right, so let's take a look at what we're doing next. So this is the next assignment, the annotated system diagram. So I'm taking the training wheels off now, and you're now allowed to draw lines and boxes and all that kind of stuff. And what you're going to do is you are going to make your own drawing template, okay, that has your symbols that you have drawn that look like this. And this is where the you draw it once and never have to draw it again kind of scenario. So you're going to get these symbols exactly the way you want them to be used in theoretically every drawing you ever do until you decide to have different looking symbols, right? So the first part of the assignment is to make this in a file, right? To draw these symbols, at least these. Okay, I want at the very bare minimum these. And then if you want to add other ones to this, because there are other things you're going to want. I mean, you're going to want patch bays. You're going to want, you know, some of the other things that are like the wireless devices and stuff like that. And if you want to go ahead and add these, now you can as part of this. You're going to need to eventually, but for the purposes of the assignment, you don't have to. For the purposes of the assignment, I just need these. But then I want you to, using your template, I want you to make this diagram. Using basically the same strategy that we used before, where you're pulling blocks from your template and just copying them and plopping them in and building this thing together. And if there are things that you don't have in your template, then you can draw it. You know, for example, if you decide not to put this wireless thing in your template and you're just going to draw it here, you know, that's fine. Draw it, and then you can copy it and array it down and everything. That's the basic idea. So let me start taking you through this. Well, okay, let me read off a couple important things here. So I want you to start integrating layers into your drawings, and we'll talk about what that means. I want you to start integrating what's called text styles, dimension styles. Those are two things that are going to be really important, and then the basic symbols. And I do ultimately want you to turn this in as what's called a DWT file, which is an AutoCAD template file, and that should have all your symbols in it. Okay, and then once you've made that template file, I want you to use that template to create a new DWG file that you then build this from. Okay, so that's the task. Let me start taking you through that. So I'm going to go to just the AutoCAD.dwt, template file, right? And we're going to start from there. And that should just be empty, okay? Nothing here. So let's start making some layers, shall we? So over here in the top right, does it say Reference Manager for you guys? What you want it to say is Layers. So if it doesn't say Layers, just click over on this one on the left and get Layers. Okay. And then open up the layer list with this little triangle, so show layer list. And what you will see is you have one layer, because that's what you get with a default AutoCAD file. Is one layer called layer 0. And just to make things a little bit easier, I'm going to right up here above properties, I'm going to click and drag this so I can see a little bit more of this. Generally speaking, drawing on layer 0 is kind of considered bad form for AutoCAD drawing. And the reason for that is every DWG file has a layer 0. And what layers allow you to do is define properties that will apply to all objects that get drawn on that layer. Things like line weights, colors, stuff like that. And so rather than having to go and define that property for every single object you draw, you just define that property for a layer, and then everything you draw on that layer automatically gets those properties, okay? Which can save you an enormous amount of time. But if you do that on layer 0, then that can become problematic when you start sharing AutoCAD files between other members on your team, either just within the sound team or within the whole production team. Because if you have things on layer 0 and someone else has things on layer 0, and you insert your DWG into their DWG, AutoCAD is going to have to resolve those things and figure out if there are conflicting properties. It probably, I'm pretty sure it defaults to whatever the drawing that you put the thing into uses, and it's going to lose your settings. Or at the very least, there will be conflict, and you may not get the outcome you're looking for. So it's very important that you don't draw on layer 0, leave that empty, and create your own layers in your template that are named things that no one else on this planet is ever going to name their layers like that. Okay? So come up with a naming strategy for you that is unique to you. That it's highly unlikely that anyone else is going to have layers in their AutoCAD file that are called the same thing as your layers. That way, when you pull your file into other people's files, or other people put their files into your file, you don't have any layer conflicts, right? They're not going to have layers that are coming in from their file that match yours. So let's just kind of start doing this. So over here in this layer view, I'm going to click on this bottom left icon that says New Layer. And let's call this one, this will be for the lines that connect between objects, right? The lines that represent cables and stuff, okay? So I'm going to call this sound JTR, those are my initials, connect. In other words, this is the layer that will have lines on it that connect boxes together. That means I'll drag this out so you can see.
What was it we were supposed to click on? I was waiting on
This bottom left thing here for New Layer. Okay.
I was waiting for the little type box. Okay.
Yeah. So this will be for connections. Now, now that I've got this selected, I can see there are some properties here for this layer that are down here at the bottom. And I'm going to make everything on this layer a specific color. And that helps me know whether I have things on the right layer or not. Right? So that, you know, I want all my layers to have a different color. So if I draw something and I inadvertently draw it on the wrong layer, I'll know really quickly because it'll be a different color than what I'm expecting it to be. Okay? So for purposes of this kind of thing, you can use these standard colors that come with it. When we get into like the loudspeaker plots where you're actually going to be like superimposing against architecture and stuff, where you are going to be plotting in color, you're going to want to be a bit more purposeful about colors that you select. But for system diagrams like this, these default screen-friendly colors are fine. So I'm going to use magenta for my AV Connect. Or for my, that didn't change. I may have to do it here. So if you click on the little box there, I'm going to switch it to magenta. That's weird that it didn't do it there. Oh, that's right, because this is for the actual objects, not the layer. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'll start there, and we'll get into some of these other things later. So let's go back and look here at what we have to draw. So, all right, so all these lines that come off of things like this line, these lines, those will be my connections. Those will be on my connect layer, okay? And then I'll want a layer that is like the boxes, right? That'll be one thing. So let me make another layer for that. And I'm going to call this sound JTR. I'm just going to call it box. Okay. And I want this to be a different color. So maybe I'll have this be green. Okay. And then I'm going to want a couple different layers for text. So I've got text that is small or inside of objects, and I've got text that's large and outside of objects. So I think maybe I'll do it based on size. So I'm going to say this will be sound JTR text small. And that can be the cyan color. And then I'll make another one called sound JTR text. I'll say medium, because maybe I'll later want to make a big one. We'll see. And I'll make that yellow. Okay. That's a good starting point. So we can start drawing things now. If you haven't already, go ahead and let's double check your units. Let's make sure that you're in decimal, because that'll make everything a little bit easier. And let's start drawing things. So I'm going to draw just this standard device block, okay? And
wait, can you remind me how you got to the units?
Just type units. Units, plural, enter. Yeah. You can also get it from the Tools menu, or no, the Format menu with units. But they move those things around sometimes, so it's easier just to remember that it's units, enter, and you'll always get it, even if they move it. Okay, so I'm going to start by just drawing this outer rectangle here, okay? And this rectangle is about 2.5 times wider than it is tall, okay? So I'm going to use the rectangle command, and it doesn't really matter where I start, but I'm going to just click anywhere for my bottom left corner. And then what you're going to do is, because we have the drawing aids turned on now, I'm just going to type 25, 10, and it will, boom, shoot the other corner 25 points on the X and 10 on the Y. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. And the first thing I notice is, wait, it's white. It's not on the right layer. So I'm going to select it, and then up here in the layer thing, I'm going to click on this layer 0 drop-down. See this up here? I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to say, instead, I want that to be on the box layer. And then it changes it. So that's how you move something from one layer to another. You just select the object, and then go to that layer drop-down menu and click a different layer, and it'll move it.
I see all the little things that I made.
You see up here? Look up here. This.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Yep. All right.
Box.
And let's see. What else? What do I want next?
How did you get it to move when it's not moving?
So select it, and then you go up here, and it shows you what layer it's on. And so you just click this drop-down menu and pick a different layer. So I'm going to move it to the Connect layer. So something else I'm thinking of is there might be a universe where I want the internal lines that are inside the box to be a different thickness than the outline box, just to help that pop on the page a little bit. So I'm going to make a second layer, or maybe a fifth layer at this point. And I'm going to call this Sound JTR Box Inner.
Inner.
Or
like
inside.
Inner box.
Or inside, or whatever, something like that. These will be the lines that are inside. And I'm going to make that cyan as well. Or, I don't know, is there another color that I'll make it red. Let's do red. Okay, so now I want to draw this internal line that is under the equipment type label. So to make sure I draw it on the right label this time, or the right layer this time, I'm going to select that layer from this drop-down. So if no objects are selected here in the model space, this drop-down menu is just going to show the current layer that you are drawing on. So I'm going to go from that drop-down menu and say, all right, I want to draw on the inside layer. So now everything I draw will be on the inside layer. So I'm going to do L enter for line, and then I'm going to object snap track off of this top left corner. And I'm going to use a very cool feature that will allow me to make sure, because I know this line is 10 points tall. And I want to draw this new line 2 points down from the top. Okay, so I'm going to do L enter. Now watch very carefully what I do. You watching? You ready? Watch. I'm going to snap to the corner, and then I'm going to start tracking down that direction. And then I'm going to hit 2 enter. And it will draw it 2 points down from that thing I was tracking from. Okay?
That's so fun.
And then with polar tracking turned on, it's going to keep me, you know, perfectly parallel here until I hit the intersection or the perpendicular inner point of that there, and then I'll hit enter to get out of that, and there's my line. Did that work?
Yes, it did.
Excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my, well, I'm going to go over to the connection layer, and I got to draw these connection lines. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go L enter, and this time I'm going to track down from the line I just drew. I'm going to object snap and track down another 2 points. And then I'm going to polar track off of there perpendicular like this in this direction, and I'm just going to type 2 enter. And it will draw a line 2 points off of that location. Did that work?
Yes.
Everybody there?
Yes.
You there, Seth?
Something weird happened with
Okay,
that.
I'll let you catch up.
However, my
Yeah, you may not have done the tracking right. So we're going to do L, enter for line. Now watch what I do.
Yes.
I snap to this line, and then I start tracking down in that direction. And then while my mouse is pointing that direction, I hit 2, enter. And it starts the line from that point. See? So now I can draw it any direction I want from that point, but I want to go out this way, perpendicular, and I type, while my cursor is pointing that direction, I type 2, enter again, and it draws it 2 points long, and then enter goes out of it. Did it work?
Yeah,
Okay.
it popped up. It was the distance I go down
Mhm.
is important to where it actually stops.
Yeah.
The 2, what does the 2 do then?
I'm just trying to keep things evenly spaced,
Okay.
right? Because I know I went 2 down from the top to get this line, and I just want to...
Keep it like that.
And we'll see. Once I start putting labels in, I might move them. But I'm just trying to give myself some sort of grid spacing that is helpful to keep things lined up.
Gotcha.
All right, so now I'm just going to do copy. And I need another one of these lines. So I'm going to select this line, enter. And then I'm going to start here as the origin, and I'm going to track down again and hit 2, enter. And now I got another one. Okay? So everybody got 2 lines?
Yes,
All right, now I need them on the other side. Easiest way to do this is with mirror. So I'm just going to do MI for mirror. It says select objects. I'm going to select those 2 lines, hit enter. And it says specify the first point of the mirror line. I'm going to use the midpoints of the box from bottom to top. Midpoint, midpoint, and it says erase source objects, no, N, enter. And now I got them on the other side. Okay? Everybody there?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now it's time for text. So let's start by, let's go to the text medium layer. And I want to do that text that goes inside this title area. So let's see. So what order do I want to do this in? So let me show you text styles. Let's start there. So you're going to go to Format Text Style, or the command for that is Text Style Edit. So start typing TEXTS, and you'll see a drop-down menu. Text Style Edit brings up that window. So let's talk about fonts, because some very important things that you need to understand. First of all, text styles, again, like, remember, you're going to have, in the end, when you start making big drawings out of this, you're going to have lots of little text labels. And, you know, you're going to show me a drawing in a look or something. And I'm going to say, I really don't like the font for all these little labels that are inside of these things. It doesn't read well when you zoom out. You really should change that font. Now, if changing that font requires you to go and click on every one of those 500 little layers one at a time and change the font, that is going to be a huge note that you're going to have to implement, right? That's a lot of work. But AutoCAD can help you with this using what's called text styles. So text styles work kind of like layers, where every time you make a piece of text, you tag it with a text style. And it pulls all the properties from that text style and applies them to that label. Which means if you are diligent about doing that when you make your template like this, then every time you copy that block and make use it again and again and again, guess what? All the labels come with it with those text styles attached. And then when I give you that note that says, hey, I don't like the font on those tiny labels, all you got to do is go change the font definition in that text style, and it will populate across every object in your drawing that uses that text style.
Wow.
And that's a one-click thing as opposed to a 3,000 click node, okay?
That's so convenient.
So it works really well if you put in the time now to create the text styles. If you wait and do that later, it's going to be tough, right? Every AutoCAD drawing comes with a text style called standard, and you should never use it, okay? For the same reasons why you don't draw on layer 0. Because if you have text objects that are tagged to the standard text style, guess what? The settings for standard do not move with the drawing. And so you take your drawing and you put it in someone else's drawing, and if they had things on the standard text style and they had changed the standard text style definitions, then your objects will inherit those properties. And what used to be a small piece of text that was in a little sans serif font now is an enormous piece of text that is in some weird cursive font or something, right? And you're like, what happened to my drawing? Okay, and it's because you drew text on the standard text style. So never, ever, ever, ever use the standard text style, ever. There's never a reason why you should use it, okay? It's there for your convenience, but convenience is, helps you in the short term, but does not help you in the long term. So try to play a long game here, and imagine the version of yourself a few days from now that needs to change 300 objects, and set yourself up for success now. So let's make a text style, shall we? So I'm going to click this little plus button to make a text style, and it's called Style 1. Now I'm going to call this, again, you want to label this something that no one else is ever going to have a label that's like this at all. So I'm going to call this Sound JTR Medium. It's highly unlikely anyone's else on this planet is going to label a text style Sound JTR Medium. That's awfully specific, okay? It's possible, could happen, but highly unlikely, okay? So, and you get all these options for fonts. Now let's talk about fonts. Anybody ever taken any like typography classes or graphic design classes where you've talked about fonts or type or typography or anything?
In hand drafting, we talked a little bit.
Okay. I'm just wondering, like, where are we in our understanding of some of these concepts? Sounds like we should start at the very beginning. Okay, so independently of computers, there are some terms you should be familiar with in the context of typefaces. Okay, and one of them is serifs. Okay, so serifs are. Let me show you something with serifs. Okay, here's one with serifs. So the serifs are the little pointy things that come off of the letters. So these little points that come off the B, this little point that comes off the C, those are serifs. Serifs look really cool, and they look pretty. They do not look very good when the text is very small. Okay, they don't render well in small scale. You shrink these texts down to something very small, and all those little pointy things make it hard to read it. And therefore, generally speaking, for most of what we are going to do, you should probably avoid serifed fonts. Because we are really good at making a lot of really tiny labels on things, okay? And really tiny labels using serif fonts rarely work very well. It just doesn't render well. Those little, you squish it down far enough, and there's just not enough pixels on the screen to accurately render that nice little pointy edge on that thing. And so it ends up getting really blocky, and the lines bleed together. So that's first concept I want you to know is serifs versus sans. They call it sans serif. Sans meaning without. I think that's Latin, isn't it? Latin for without. So sans serif fonts means font without serifs. Okay. So I would, if you're considering fonts to choose for your drawings, try to avoid the serif fonts. The next thing is the concept of, well, I want to make sure I use the right word here. Let me pull it up in font book. Yeah, here it is. Fixed width. That's what I was looking for. So what fixed width means is every letter uses the same amount of horizontal space. Okay? As opposed to not fixed width, where it doesn't do that. And there's lots of reasons why you might want to do that. So, for example, look at this. This Gill Sans. You see how that little a is quite a lot less horizontal space than the capital A is. See that?
Yes.
Whereas here, on these fixed width ones, the lowercase a and the capital A are the same width. That is very important for technical drawings that you're going to do in CAD, having fixed width. And the reason for that is, number one, that scale zoom out factor. Okay, if every letter is the same width, then when you zoom out on it and it goes really small, it's easier to read. Okay, but it also helps enormously with your spacing. So if no matter what letters you type, no matter what that label says, if you can have predictable control over how much space it will take up, that's very important for these drawings, because what you don't want is to use the wrong combination of letters, and just because of the actual letters you had to use to type the word you were going to type, suddenly that label is a very weird width that doesn't work with your spacing and your borders and stuff like that. So using fixed width fonts is another thing I would highly recommend. There's another concept that we need to, and to understand this, we need to go all the way back to the olden times when AutoCAD first existed. When AutoCAD first existed, there was not such a thing as a graphical user interface, we know that, but there was also not such a thing as a laser printer, okay? Or even like an inkjet printer. Like, those didn't exist. If you wanted to print something on a large piece of paper, like a draft that you had done, it used what's called a plotter. And a plotter was essentially a robot. And it had this, it literally was a little XY robotic, arm that held a pen. And you would get a big piece of paper, you'd feed it in there, and there was a motor that would move the paper back and forth, and then there was another motor that would move that pen left to right across that page. And the combination of moving that paper and moving that pen, it could actually draw things, okay? And so you would do it in CAD, and then you would send it to that plotter, and the plotter would literally pick up a pen and draw the thing that you had CAD'd, okay? And that was how you got big drawings out of the computer. Obviously, we now have, much more sophisticated ways to do that. And therefore, there are some options now that you didn't have before. But back in that time when you used a pen plotter, pens were not very good at doing a font like what you see on the screen right now. Okay, why? Because the pen there's a fixed, line weight to that pen, right? That pen the lines it draws will only be so thick, okay? And there's no filler, right? That pen can't like all of these big thick lines that are filled in, like it can't do that. Pen can't do that. And if it tries to do it, it's going to look really weird. And depending on the size of the page and the size of the text you're trying to draw on that page, that pen may or may not be able to, the motors that manipulate the pen those stepper motors may not have the resolution to get you pointy serifs, for example. And so AutoCAD created their own font format called this SHX format. And so if you're looking in the text styles in AutoCAD, you see these things called SHX. Well, those are AutoCAD plotter fonts. And they are fonts that were specifically designed to be able to be drawn with a pen plotter, as opposed to the ones called TT, which are true type fonts, which which is now, true type fonts have things and features in them that the pen plotter fonts just don't have. And now we can use those. We can use those true type fonts because now we have plotters that can do that. But that wasn't always the case. But here's the really great thing about those pen plotter fonts. All the things that they had to do to make that font possible to draw with a pen are all things that make it work really well for technical drawings. Things like fixed width and serifs that don't render well at small scales, right? Like they had to address all those problems in creating these fonts, which means they work really well for a lot of the things we need to do. And so I really like using those pen plotter fonts still because of that, because I don't have to worry about line weights scaling funny. I don't have to worry about like things needing to be rendered too thick that when I zoom it down, they bleed together. All of that has been figured out for these pen type fonts. So I really like to use them. You don't have to, but I would recommend that you do, just because it saves you some hassle down the road when you start getting a lot of labels really small. So you can look at some of these and you can start to see what makes them different, right? These can all be drawn with a pen, right? Here's another one. See, here's an attempt to do a serif font that has, I forget what this is called, but the different thicknesses and stuff, and they're just doing it by drawing outlines. And that's how it would come out. But you can see, like, these are all things that can be drawn with a pen. Isn't that cool? It's really interesting. So I'm going to show you, see, there's a really interesting one. Imagine that being drawn.
Can I use that one?
No. Well, you can, but I will have something to say about that. Okay, let me show you the one that I really like. Where is it? Oh, here it is. I really like this one. This Roman S, Romans. I find this one works really well for a lot of what we need to do. Generally speaking, it is not strictly speaking, fixed width because the lowercase letters are smaller than the uppercase letters, but they are consistent at least. So all the uppercase are fixed width and all the lowercase are fixed width. Okay, but they are not fixed width from between uppercase and lowercase. But generally speaking, for technical drawings, we write in all caps anyway. And so that's a throwback to the old hand drafting days. Everything was done in all caps. And that's still pretty common. So I really like this one. So that's what I'm going to use. You don't have to use it, but I'm just telling you it works well. So if you'd like to use it, it scales really well. And scaling is what is the thing that's very hard for us. So I'm going to pick that, and I'm going to hit apply. And then, there's some of these other properties that we can look at a little bit later. But for now, let's just start there. Okay. So now it should pull that up. And under properties here, you see where it says the text style. You can open that up and you can select your style. It should have done that automatically, but if it didn't, you can do it. All right. So let's just make some text. There are two options here. There is text and there is M-text. M-text stands for multi-line text. Generally speaking, for the most part, you're going to use single line text. Okay, so that is just text. So type the word text. And it says specify the start point of the text. In other words, where do you want it to start? Well, this is not ultimately where it's going to stay, but I'm going to start by just typing it here at this bottom left corner of this title bar area. So I'm just going to click there as that's the start point. And it says specify the height. Well, I can type a number in here, or I can use it by just clicking on 2 points to specify the height. Okay, so I'm going to start by just saying, well, what if I just do the height of this area, which ultimately ends up being 2. And it says, what's the rotational angle of the text? Defaults to 0, and you should keep it at 0. It says, all right, now type it. So in all caps, I'm going to type equipment type. Enter, enter. Okay. And you can kind of see what happens here. So when I say, using this pen font, when I say the text height is 2, it means the text height is 2, right? The top of the line and the bottom the top part of the letter and the bottom part of the letter will be touching those 2 lines that are 2 units apart, okay? Well, that's not exactly what I want. So, but now I'm at least on the right track. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go down here to these properties, and I'm going to go to height and change that. So I'm going to say, all right, let's instead let's see what 1.75 looks like. Even that's not great. I'm going to do 1.5. That's better.
And to get the text up there, you type text and equal.
So, let me do it again. So make sure you're on your text layer, your medium text layer, and make sure your text style in the properties over here is selected. Then you're going to type the word text, TXT, enter. Oops. Specify the start point. I'm just going to use this bottom left corner here and click. Specify height. I'm going to do click, click to make it fit in that spot. And it says rotation angle. It defaults to 0, so you can just hit enter, and then you start typing. And then once you're done, you hit enter, enter to get out of the command. All right, so I'm going to click this, and I'm going to set the height to 1.5. And I would super like this to be centered vertically between these 2 lines, okay? So I can do this by messing around with the justification here a little bit. So you see this justify thing? So if you click on justify, while that text is selected, here's all your options. The one that I want here is called middle center. Is the text selected?
Oh.
Have the text selected, and then you'll see it. So I want middle center. What middle center is the text will grow out horizontally and vertically from a center point. Okay? And that is also will be considered the origin point of the text, will be that middle point of the label. That sounds like exactly what I want. Now look what happens. If I put that in there, look where it puts it now. Right at that point where I said the text started. Yeah? Okay. So how do I get it where I want it? Well, I'm going to cheat just a little bit. So I'm going to make a line. So I'm going to do line, enter, and I'm going to draw a line between these two midpoints in the title area. Okay? Now that line is directly centered horizontally in this area. But guess what? That line will have a midpoint. So now I can take my little text label here and I can move it, M, enter, and the base point will be this origin, and then I will snap it to the midpoint of that line I drew. And now it is perfectly centered. And then I can just delete that line by selecting it, and there it is. Now that I've got that set up, watch what happens if I decide to change this label. So if I double click in here and type something else, I can say mixing console. Look what happens. See how it grows out from the center and keeps it perfectly horizontally centered no matter what I type?
Yes.
So I can type something else as microphone, right? Or system processor. And it keeps it centered in there, which is super, super helpful. And this will help you when you start making copies of this thing and having to change those labels. You're never going to have to move that text, no matter what it says. Unless you decide to type something bigger than what can fit in there, right? Take a look here. I don't know that I'm super happy yet with the height. I think I'd like it to be just a little bit smaller. Let's try 1.25. That's better. That's gonna pass the zoom out test a little bit better. If I zoom out, I'll still see the spacing, whereas before I wasn't seeing that. All right, make sense? Everybody with me so far?
Makes sense, but mine didn't move. I clicked my text. I don't know. But I did text and change this to 1.0.
Okay, get it, escape. You're in the middle of a command. Okay, so now select it. Now you should be able to check it.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, and remember to do everything in all caps.
Okay.
Okay. All right, now I need this make/model over the top. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this one that I made, and now watch this. What is the base point? Watch. The base point is going to be the midpoint of the bottom line. And then I'm going to copy up and I'm going to use the midpoint of the top line. And then see how that looks. So now I'm going to type what I think needs to be in there by default, make/model. And now that I see how big that slash is, I'm going to move this up a little bit. So I'm going to start at that base point, and I'm going to go up, what, 0.5 to give myself a little space. And it is currently middle center aligned. But I probably want it something different, actually. Yeah, I want to use bottom center. And in fact, that probably would have fixed my problem from before. If I go back to where it was before, and I just click on it and I switch it to bottom center, then it shifts it up where I need it to be. Okay? Now that will never, there's no way that that text is ever going to touch this box line. Okay, because it's bottom center and the insertion point is right here.
So everything you did post copying and typing.
Okay?
How did you get to that?
So here, I'll do it again. So I'm going to take this label and I'm going to copy.
Right.
And the base point is going to be this midpoint.
Yes.
And then I'm going to click on the midpoint of the line above it. Okay? And then I'm going to type make/model. And then I'm going to select it and switch the justification to bottom center, and it pops it up there. Yeah? All right, I'm getting somewhere here. This is starting to look like something. Okay, I'm going to make a new text style. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to type style. It turns out that's the command, style. And I'm going to make another one, and this is going to be sound JTR small. And I'm going to go back to this medium one. And now that I know that I like the, oops. Now that I know that I liked the 1.25 height, I'm just going to put that into the text style, so that all of my medium text will always be that height. Okay? And that will help protect me from myself, from having inconsistent labels. So I'm going to just make the 1.25 be part of my text height. And then I'll work with this small one for a minute, and I'll figure out what I want to put in there. But this will be another one, and I'm going to use that same font that I used before because it scales really well. And then I can close this. So now I'm going to go to my text small layer, and I need to make these little labels here, these input-output labels. Okay, so let's start by typing text. And I'm going to click as the start point will be this top left corner of the inside of this. You see what I'm doing? What left?
My line when I was doing the text copying and pasting.
Oh. Maybe undo. So I'm going to click there and specify height. Well, I want this to be smaller than certainly this other one. I'm going to start by, let's just try 0.75 and see what I end up with. Rotation angle is 0, and then I'm going to type input. Enter, enter. That's actually not a terrible height. I think that might be okay. Did you get it?
Keep like asking questions.
Okay.
I got my line back,
Okay.
and now I would like to catch
Yep, so type text. Are you in your small
up.
thing? Okay.
I changed it.
Great, so text enter. Yeah, go onto the layer as well. There you go. So type text. Okay, base point is going to be that little point there. And height, I don't know if you're doing the same heights as I am, but I did 0.75. So type 0.75, enter. And, oh, yeah, that's fine. So now just type input.
Okay.
There we go, enter, enter.
Oh.
There you go. Okay, so that's not exactly where I want it to be, all right? So let's see if we can figure this out using our justification tools. So if I select that, it's currently justifying left. I would like it to be top left. And see how it flips it down there?
Yes.
So that's good, but it's still touching the line. I don't really like that. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to create what's called a construction line. I'm going to create a couple of them. So it's called, the command is xline. And a construction line is an infinite line. And it's just one you draw to like use as a guide. So to xline, enter, and specify a point. Well, I'm going to start from this top corner, and I'm going to go over as far as I think I want to go, which I think will be, yeah, let's try 0.5. And then it says, okay, where does the line need to go? I want it to go vertical. So I end up like that. And then I'm going to type another construction line. And this one's going to go down from this bottom line, also at 0.5, but it'll be a horizontal line. Enter. See that? Everybody get that? I'm just making some guidelines for me so I can have something to snap to. Right? That I know is exactly where I want it to be. Okay? I'll do it again. So let me get rid of these. So I'm going to do xline, enter. It says specify a point. Well, the point is going to be I'm going to start here and track this direction and type 0.5, enter. And then if I start moving my mouse, you should see the line spinning around that spot. Okay? And I want to use my polar tracking to lock it vertically.
Created the line. It made a horizontal line.
You must have done an extra click. So let me do it one more time. Xline, enter. Specify a point. So I'm going to hover over the top left, track over this direction. I haven't clicked yet. So while I'm tracking horizontally, I type 0.5, enter. I haven't touched the mouse yet. And now I start spinning the mouse, and and the line, the infinite line, is spinning around that axis. Is that happening? Okay, and now get it to lock into that vertical angle, and then click with the mouse. And then it makes another one, right? You can keep making them if you want, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to hit enter to get out of the command. Okay, and then we're going to do another one. This one will be horizontal, but down 0.5 from there. And we end up with that.
That's the midpoint of the vertical line?
There is no midpoint.
Down 0.5
from this horizontal line here, right? Okay, are we there?
Yes, mine doesn't look exactly, but it happened.
Because we're going to use these lines for a lot of things.
Mine's not really close.
You must not have done the full 0.5.
So take this one out
Yep.
and go through.
E-enter.
Sorry.
So do it again. Do X line.
Line.
And now it's It doesn't matter because we're going to move it.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Okay. You guys okay?
Yeah, I'm just confused why, like, why is the ion input is on that one, whereas the ion input on yours is, and it did that with equipment type too, but it was on.
Are you using the same font in your textile that I was using? See, that would be
A very similar font.
okay. All right, so here's now what I'm going to do. I like these construction lines. I'm going to use them for a lot of things. I want a copy of it on the other side, this vertical line. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to mirror it. So MI, enter, and go off this midpoint and make another one there. And I will say no to erase source objects. Okay? So I've got one there too. That'll be helpful in a minute. So what I'm doing is I'm basically creating some drawing aids here to help me position all these labels inside of this box so that they'll all be lined up against these guidelines. And that's going to help a lot, as you'll see in a minute. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to move, enter, click on this input label, enter, and then click on this little box, that little endpoint there, and then click on the intersection point of the two construction lines. And now it's sitting there.
The letters themselves are just wonky.
Are you using the same font I'm using? You might just be snapping to a weird spot. You might want to just make the label again.
The input.
Yeah. So I ended up doing 0.75 height. So now that I have the guidelines, I can just delete that and start over. So I can do text. Start point of text is here. Specify height will be 0.75. Angle is 0. And I will type input. Enter, enter. And then I will switch the justification to top left. That's what I end up with. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this label from here to there and snap it to the intersection of the other two construction lines. Okay? And then I'm just going to switch the justification to, what do you think? Top right, exactly. Top right. There we go. And now look what happens. If I decide to change this, I can say, maybe I'd say I have to specify something else. So this will be, I don't know. Yeah. Right. See how it grows in the right direction? That's super useful. Same thing over here. I can change this one to outputs. And it grows in the right direction, but stays lined up with those construction lines. See how helpful that is? Oh, that's great. Okay.
None of these look like words anymore.
What's wrong?
Nothing looks like a word anymore. It's just a collection of letters at this point.
Yeah.
My brain lost equipment so fast.
Okay. So
Within 2 seconds.
now I need to make these numeric labels for the lines, 1 and 2.
How do we change the name?
Change the name of what?
That second input.
Just double click on it, and then you can enter in the, and then you can type something else. Did that work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
starting to line up now too. I don't
Oh, good.
know what the issue is, but
Okay. All right, so here's now what I'm going to do. I now need to make the numerical labels. So I am going to copy this one from the same point, that intersection of the construction lines. Now watch what I'm going to do. I am going to click here, and then I am going to track off of the actual connection line to the intersection of the construction line and stick it there. And then I'm going to change this justification to middle left so that it will be aligned vertically against that connection point. Okay? And then I'm going to change this to just say 1. And now that I see that with the label, I don't really like that spacing. So I'm going to go ahead and take all of these and move them down a little bit. I'll just move them down 1 point. I like that better. So now I can do copy, and I'll copy this 1, but I'm going to use the base point as the end of the line that it labels. See what I'm doing? I'm going to click there and then click there, and now I know they're perfectly spaced, and I can make that a 2. And now I can, what would happen if I mirrored these? Let's just see. Okay, so if I mirror those ones over there, I just need to now switch the justification for them. So I'll select both of them, and this will be middle right. And then I'll move them. I need a snap point. Let me see. So to get the snap point for these, you're looking for insertion. So right-click on your object snaps and activate insertion. And then I get the insertion point of the text. And I'm going to stick it on there. Yeah. Okay, and then middle right. Yeah. And now I've got them all, and I can get rid of my construction lines now. Get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. Let's see. It looks like the insertion point got off for that. Let me move that. So I'll stick the insertion point up against there. Let me check these and make sure they're, yep, that's right. And that's right, yep. Now they're right. So I just checked the insertion point to see if the insertion point is touching my construction line. And I did that on both of them. And when I did that over on the right ones, for some reason the 2 had shifted its insertion point. But now then I just moved it so that it touches the insertion point there.
Did you make your letters smaller?
Well, I mean, these labels are 0.75 height, but I did that earlier on.
Right.
So now I can get rid of these construction lines. There we go. Now everything should track pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead. I like that height, so I'm going to go open up my text styles, and I'm going to define 0.75 as the text height for that style. That way, if I make any others, they'll automatically be that height.
Changing my text height isn't doing anything, and I don't have space to put my numbers in here.
Let's see. So click on the thing you're trying to change. Wait, you're in a command. Get out of the command. make sure you know,
Out of it.
make sure you're out of the command. Escape, 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 or whatever, to get just make sure you're out of it before you're trying to manipulate properties.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, this is looking not bad. Look at that. Now you're thinking, boy, that was a lot of work. Yeah, it was. I mean, we were going pretty slow, but also, like, you only have to do this once. Get it right the first time, and I never have to draw this symbol ever again in my life. Okay? So it's worth it to take the time now to get it right. So that's the idea. And what you're going to do then is take that process I just took you through, and you're going to draw all these other things too. Okay? And no restriction on the types of commands you can use. So if you want to experiment with some other types of drawing commands, feel free. But you're trying to recreate these. There's a couple other things I want to show you that I need to show you. See this little thing here? That NL4 label? That is a dimension. So let me show you how to do that. So that is dim style. Dimension styles. Okay? Also comes with a standard that you should never, ever, ever, ever use. Okay? Never, ever, ever use the standard dimension style. Always make your own. So I'm going to call this sound JTR small. And start with standard, use all dimensions. Yes, that's fine. Okay? And it comes up here, and there's a couple things you're going to want to specify here. I would suggest going over to text here and see how it says text styles. Make sure it doesn't. Make sure you're not using the standard text style. I'm going to say use my small, and then it'll pull in all those settings. And then should be all you need to do is just go in.
Should the text color be by block or by layer?
Probably by layer. Yeah, that's a good idea. Do it by layer.
You got to this box by going to dimension?
No, dimension style, dim style, DIM style, enter, dim style.
And then
You can also go to the format menu and open up dimension style if you want.
how did you get all of these different, like?
Well, I had to make the style, so you make it. You hit the plus button to make a new style. You label it, and then this comes up. So yeah, that should be all you got to do is define a text style. Yes, I would suggest say by layer, and then click OK. So this is probably what you've got. If you got behind, you go to dimension style, you get this window. So you're going to click plus to make a new one. You call it what you want. Start with this annotative, or not annotative, start with standard, and just label whatever you want, and then it brings this up. And I would go to text, select your text style, and for text color, say by layer. And that's really all you should really have to change at this point.
And we in the small text right now, yeah?
Yeah, I would do small text, yeah. Okay, so now here's what we're going to do. Let's say, let me go over here. I'm not going to take the time to draw the whole thing, but let's just say I've got these two lines here, and they're about, what, 5 apart. Let's say these are the two lines that are going into the two loudspeaker drivers, okay? Like over here on this symbol. I just drew two lines 5 units apart. And I'm going to do a type dim for dimension. And I'm going to click from midpoint to midpoint. And then I can stick it wherever I want horizontally, so I'll just stick it there. And then get out of there. And now I can just go in and change that label to, let's see. Let me make sure I've, okay, yeah, so with it selected, if I go over to the properties, see where it says text override? Because you don't want that number in there, you just want to be able to type a label. And I'm just going to type NL4 into text override, and it'll change it. And there you go. That's how you get that.
Where do you see text override?
So with the dimension selected,
Right.
and you're not in it, get out of all your commands. Click on the dimension, and look over here on the properties. You should see text override. Yep, and then you can type in the NL4. So that's how you get that. The other thing I need to show you is the circle. So you're going to make your little circle, okay? And you're going to need to fill that solid, okay? So that is called a hatch. So type hatch, and it brings up this little drop-down window. And there's this little box, which is like this little swatch. You want to pull that up and just do solid. So select solids instead of the hatch. And the color can be by layer. And once you've got that clicked or selected, you just click on the inside of the circle. And it fills it in.
Wow.
And then you can escape out of the command and you're good to go. There's your solid point.
That's so cute.
Now, interestingly enough, what it did is it drew a separate object. If I just take the hatch out, you see the outline is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can decide if you want to keep the outline or delete the outline and just use the little hatch you use. Either way, it's fine, but you just got to make sure if you keep both, you got to make sure you move both.
Gotcha.
Right?
The answer is
So if you want to separate them out, just select the hatch and then move that, and then you can delete the actual circle you drew and then move the hatch back. But you do have to have center turned on, which it might is. Will it not give it to me? It'll give it to me there. But it won't snap to it. Well, that might be a reason to keep the line. I usually don't delete the circles, but that's probably why. I forgot why, but now I remember why. Because then I can get the center point snap. Okay, that's everything I think you need to know to do this. Obviously, some of these labels, you'll need to experiment a little bit with the justification to get them all to line up right. But once I have this, so let's say this is my thing. Now I'm just going to go File, Save As, and instead of AutoCAD Drawing, I'm going to do AutoCAD Drawing Template, DWT. And I can save that wherever I want. So you make a folder for all this kind of stuff, and I'll say JTR sound template. And I'll hit save. And what kind of measurements are you using, English or metric? It doesn't really matter. And it's going to say enter a template description, and I'm just going to say JTR sound. Enter. Okay, it's now saved it. And I'm now looking at the template file. But watch what happens. I'm going to close this now. And then I'm going to go over and find it. And if I double click on this, it created a blank, well, a new DWG with the generic name called Drawing2 DWG. So I'm not actually editing the template right now. I am working with a copy, that was made from that template. So I never have to touch the actual template once I've made it. Okay, so I'm now working in a different DWG. If you do need to go back and edit your template, you need to go to File, Open, and select Drawing Template from the format. And then find that file and open it up. And then it will open the actual template so you can edit the template file and make changes to it. And then once you save it, it'll update the template. And then from there on out, again, when you're ready to make a new drawing, you just go double click on that template file and it opens up a copy of the template that you can now edit and do whatever you want and without changing the original. So that's what you're going to do. Once you've got all of the symbols drawing the way you want it, save that as a DWT file, close it, and then open that DWT file as a copy and use it to make that system diagram.
Close it.
Just like I did. Then just go find it on your computer, double click on it, and it will make a copy for you. And in this case, you do want to pay attention to the labels in this drawing, sample drawing I'm giving you. So let me pull that up and just make sure that you see what I'm talking about. So the labels here are different. See how I've changed them? So you do want to like make your labels say these things when you make your drawing. So you're going to copy the block that you made in your template, copy it down, and then once it's there, you could double click and change all the labels to make them say what they need to say. But if you did all your justifications right and everything, you should just be able to double click on that text thing, type whatever you want, and the text should still fit where you want it to be. It'll go pretty quick. So my advice is put all the hard work into making the blocks correctly, and then making the actual diagram will go very quick. Okay? Questions? Anything you're seeing that I haven't told you how to do?
I just want to make sure I did it right. I saved it and I put it back up and I'm in it. How do you know if it's an example or not? Like,
So what is AutoCAD say the name of the file that you're editing?
it says drawing.
Yeah, see? So it's made a copy.
Okay. Cool. Good to know.
But if you want to go back and actually edit the template, you have to go into AutoCAD, go File, Open, and select DWT as the file format, and then click on it and open it, and then you can edit the template directly.
Okay. Go to the DWT file of the template.
Yep.
That's what I opened up.
Yeah, I know.
Even though it says drawing one.
Yeah, I know, but you want to do it a different way. You're not going to just double click on it in the find.
Okay.
So you're going to go to File menu, Open, and change the format to DWT. Now, where did you save that DWT file?
I saved it. It's here.
So, look and see where it is. What was it called?
It was called,
There it is. It was just, it's just a directory. It's here. So now if you click Open, now you're editing the actual template. See that?
Thank you.
So, you need to upload 2 files when you turn in this assignment. I want you to upload that DWT file, and I want you to upload the DWG file that contains your system diagram. So you're going to upload 2 files. That way I can check and make sure you actually made a template. Because I know how you guys think sometimes. And you're going to think, that's an extra step I don't have to do, because we're just going to make the drawing. And if you do that, you are going to make your life harder later. It'll be easier now, but harder later. So take the time to do it right now, so that later, in subsequent assignments, it will be easier. So I want to make sure you actually make that template file. Any other questions?